kids are dropped off.
Yes.
The house is packed up.
Yes.
Ready to go. What are we up to today?
So today we're heading into London to go and meet with Toby Babb from Harrington, Starr, Karla, Reffold, who is the MD of Beecher, Madden, and also Jeremy Wastall, who's the commercial director of PGC, who sponsored the event that we're going to be doing with them.
Big shout out to Jeremy for sponsoring the event.
Big shout out. So we're going to film a podcast episode today, similar to our Brighton recruiting roundtable, but today's topic is on how to make it in America.
And just a bit of context, Toby and Karla came on my podcast and they were both excellent guests. And one of the things I'm trying to do is bring together some of the guests that we've had on and create these roundtable discussions. And when we were in New York last month, was it last month now?
Gosh, it's nearly 6 weeks ago, I think.
We met Jeremy for a drink, and we've been connected with Jeremy by our friend Backdoor Barry, the recruiter's lawyer. And
Shout out to Backdoor Barry.
and his company run all the contractors through in the US through UK recruitment firms. Not all of them, but they're definitely the main supplier.
They're definitely conquering that market, so it's going to be really exciting. I think going to be discussing lots of different topics, hottest locations in America right now. Can you recruit it remotely? You know, do you need to be there? What's the challenges? 360 versus 180. It's just going to be a really interesting discussion. Lots of different perspectives, lots of different stages of people's journey of where they're at and how they're doing the American market. So it's going to be a good topic.
Yeah, the what, the where, the how, the lessons learned. And we're really looking forward to getting into London and getting out of the village for a day. All right, welcome everybody to the Recruiter Startup episode on how to make it in America. I am joined with Toby, Karla, Jeremy, and who's this person?
Your lovely wife.
My lovely wife. All right, great. So, I suppose we'll start with you, Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what PGC do and give us an overview on the American market.
Sure, yeah. So PGC, we're basically a payrolling company, or what's known in America as employer of record. So we basically illegally employ contractors on behalf of our recruitment agencies. We also work with not just agencies, but tech startups and corporate businesses. The reason they use us is they want to outsource risk and responsibility. And we do all the payroll, timesheets, contracts, compliance, administration, keep all the contractors happy.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the landscape, we're working with about 120 companies.
Wow.
80 are recruitment agencies from the UK that have now gone into the US. About 40 have offices. The other 40 are doing business in the US from the UK. All contractors. We don't get much visibility on the perm.
Yeah.
So these guys will probably be better to get a perm landscape, but the contractors we know quite well.
Okay, so we've been doing Rec for 4 years, and 5 years ago you worked for NES
Yes, that's
as
right,
their
yeah.
internal recruiter. What was the American landscape like when you were working as an internal headhunter for them from a British agency perspective back then?
It was really different. I mean, I was based out of Calgary at the time, so I was recruiting for their Americas. So that included Canada, the US, and they had some operations happening in Mexico as well at the time. But in regards to the number of UK recruitment agencies that were in the US at that time, it was significantly smaller. I mean, there was a small handful, that were kind of, going after that market. And even actually just even in the energy, oil and gas space, there was probably NES, Faircroft, Brunel, I think Air Swift as they are now, but it was Swift and then Air Energy at the time. And that was kind of it. I mean, now there's so much more. So I think just even in that short period, you can see how many people have recognized the potential and the opportunity in America and have made that jump over there. Because, when it came to a recruiting perspective, I was pretty fortunate position because we didn't have as many competitors at the time. So it was actually a nice place to be, definitely.
Yeah. What was the stat on that post that we mentioned?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the stat was something like 26,000 agencies in the UK, 29 in the US, but I think that's actually wrong. There's actually around 20,000 agencies in the US and about 45,000 agencies in the UK registered, but about 29 or 36,000 with over 250k revenue.
Wow. And if you think of the difference in population, I think as well, so what the UK population is like 66 and the American is 330. I mean, it's just so different. I mean, I think that is a perfect highlight to show, you know, how untapped and infinite the potential is in the Americas at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, even with the additional recruitment agencies going, you know, let's say the extra 100 over the past 5 years, there's still room to grow, and they're not necessarily rubbing shoulders with each other just yet.
When we were over there, we met up for a drink in between doing loads of podcasts and running around, and Charlotte getting the address.
Despite booking the meeting and choosing the location, us going to the wrong location. Terribly sorry for that.
Okay, there's more than one WeWork in New York.
Yes, and more than one Four Seasons. Just check that.
But when we look at the landscape, and I'll put this out to Ollie, but you first, Jeremy, is New York where most of your work is? Is it spread out throughout the country? Like, what are you seeing?
We produced a heat map based on I think it was the past 5 years data of where all the contractors we'd ever employed were placed. The 3 hotspots were New York, California, and Texas. Yeah. In particular, you know, Manhattan, Austin, Texas, and LA and San Francisco. Those were the 3 dominant markets. That's where most people go. Yeah. I think typically most people are going to go straight to New York because time zone, culturally it's quite similar to London, and then they probably start looking at other places. But you can really do recruitment from one place in the US and do the whole market. And we were talking about earlier about focusing on a niche and focusing on that niche, and with focusing on the niche you can kind of place anywhere, but otherwise it's quite difficult to focus.
Karla, you didn't do the New York thing specifically. You've kind of gone for, is it Washington and New York?
We have an office in New York, but our focus has been Washington, DC for the last couple of years. For cybersecurity, it's a real hotspot because you've got people leaving government. But we're seeing a massive increase in the work coming through in Texas as well. We're seeing
in Austin or anywhere in particular?
Dallas. In particular, but Austin too. We're seeing companies, our clients in New York are asking us to go support them there.
And that's due to cost of living, is it, and tax benefits? And
for them, I think they're relocating their security teams, which are essentially a back office function, to lower cost locations, and then keeping a few senior level people or business facing security people in New York or their other main hubs.
We're really not giving you enough airtime here, Toby. I know you're shy.
I'm prowling, ready.
Your first media event of today.
Yeah. Are we going to get a word in now?
Okay, here we go.
Right.
So, when we met Rob over there, I said to him, you know, what would you do differently? And he said, I would have went out earlier.
It's very easy to say that, isn't it? And we looked at it, and the scale of it, and just when you look at the sheer size of America, we were saying beforehand, weren't we, that each state is effectively a country, and those stats we said just now just prove exactly the scale of opportunity that we've got out there. So, look, would we have started earlier? Absolutely, but I think that with all of these things, you've got to have the right people, and so many companies are going out there with the wrong people who just want to go out there and because they're in an arms race to get out to America. And it doesn't matter what business you're doing or where you're doing it or how good the market is. If you've got the wrong people in that space, you're never going to grow a business. So I think you've got to be careful about it. And there is a little caveat to it. And we wouldn't, if we'd gone out earlier, we wouldn't have the right people to do that sort of thing. And it had to be the right time for Rob. It had to be the right time for Sarah. It had to be the right time for us to do it. And we've gone out there. It's just the scale of it is really exciting.
What type of due diligence should a business do before they move out there?
Well, look, there's a lot of legalities and stuff like that. Fortunately, that's Rob's world rather than mine. He's the detail guy on all of that sort of thing. And
you're the face.
Clearly, very clearly. But I go back to it. Look, people love to overcomplicate all areas of recruitment, I think, and part of it is you can overthink a load of different things. And my view is if you've got the right people on board to do it, then go for it, and all the legal stuff you can take care of. but it is, it's you know the job. You can do it from here, as we were just hearing stats of. You say what half of your client base pretty much is doing it from here to there.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, there's logistics to that. We did it for 8 months, and it was hard work. Sarah and Rob were staying in the office till God knows when at night, and starting later, and sacrificed a lot of their life for it, which I'm being massively grateful forever for. But it makes it a difficult thing with time zones, and you've got to make sure that you're able to do it. And clearly, in any job, I think you can do it better on the ground than you can do remotely.
Yeah.
How do you find running a remote team and working jobs from over here? Like, what does that is that a challenge? How does that work for you?
I think it's a challenge if you want to scale, and we really want to take advantage of that opportunity, which is why we need more people on the ground there. You can do it from here, we have done for a number of years, but you don't get that face time, and face time in recruitment is what makes your deals happen. It's what makes you win clients, get those deeper relationships. So it's much harder to do from here, I think.
You do a lot of social proofing though, don't you? You've got you're a speaker for different events. Can you walk us through some of that you're able to build your credibility over there from here?
Yeah, there's lots of things I think anyone can do. I'm fortunate enough to write for Forbes, which gives us a real credibility level. But you can make your presence really well known with tools like LinkedIn now and things like this, where you can really showcase who you are. And we do a lot of Skype calls and Skype meetings now. We produce quite a lot of research around salaries, so we'll do that with a screen sharing and talk people through it to try and mitigate some of that FaceTime.
I think it's quite interesting, you sort of mentioned the FaceTime element, because the business obviously that we own and operate at the moment is kind of a fully remote business. I mean, we have a remote team, we specialise in international recruitment, we don't necessarily get to meet a lot
London
of our candidates.
London
as well, Manchester as well. But we haven't had kind of the luxury to date to be able to meet a lot of those clients, necessarily meet the candidates. And it's funny, for a while I think my mentality got into a remote recruitment as 100% possible, and of course it works and it does all of this, but then I think exactly as you mentioned in regards to scaling and building that out, without that FaceTime it is a challenge. And I think this process that we're now going through, dualta, very grateful to have started with the podcast, but now we're taking it on the road and we're actually going to New York, meeting people and stuff. I think I underestimated how important that FaceTime was. I think I fell into this habit of remote recruitment's fine, you don't need to meet people, it's okay, we now have the technology to do it. But I think having jumped back into that and going and meeting people again, I'm like, wow, I forgot how important that element I think is, and how it really does build those relationships, and it makes those relationships stronger, and there's more of a commitment and a trust and all of those aspects to it. I think
Creating content with people is even the next stage on that, because I suppose there has to be a bit of trust that you're not going to put something out there that makes somebody look ridiculous.
You're in it together for the right reasons and everything like that. But I that was a revelation for me this year, I think, is getting back to that FaceTime and recognising the importance of it.
I can talk from that because we're a US business. We don't provide any services in the UK, but we have a team of 12 here. And that's because all of our clients start here and then they go to the US. So, there are people that do what we do out in the US, but no one is here meeting and speaking to our clients like we do. So people build a personal relationship over with us for a year or 2 years before they even start going to the US or going to do contractors. And naturally they're going to use us. We've got a great service, don't get me wrong, but they know us and they trust us over that kind of period of time.
I think that's an interesting aspect as well, isn't it? Because it's what you're talking about there is companies who are here and then building that trust to go out there. So it's those, and so many of our clients are based in London and in New York and in San Francisco and such like. So the ability to do the same sort of thing to help US companies come over here and vice versa is another bonus.
Exactly.
Because you're there and you've got almost another revenue stream that comes out of that particular bit of fortune. Really.
Totally. Yeah.
It's those additional sales I think you get from that conversation you have. You don't just take a job brief, you then have a chat and you talk about introductions and referrals and what else you can do. It's that additional business I think you get.
Yeah, more of that networking side of things, isn't it? So it's through those casual conversations, identifying sort of further opportunities, definitely.
Charlotte, was there anything that surprised you about our trip to New York in any of the companies that we met from your perception beforehand?
Yeah, massively. I mean, I think just obviously seeing the increase in volume of the recruitment companies, but also as well, I suppose, really seeing the differences. I think to an extent as well as a rec to rec, you probably fall into a terrible category of recruitment agencies are all the same, you're all looking for the same thing, blah, blah, blah. That's a very naive view, but, you know, it happens. You fall into that, you're recruiting a similar job. And I think actually going and visually seeing like, wow, okay, this is this type of person and this is the setup they have and this is theirs. And they're, you know, like fading a 320 person machine. And it's just, you know, and they're all so different. And the people are all different. And the visions of the business are all different. And I think, again, without having seen that and spent the time with people like Rob and stuff like that, you know, it's whilst you can get a sense of it, you know, through emails, through talking and all of that, sometimes seeing's believing, you know, and I think actually having that for me was, I walked away from New York going, wow, for someone, America's an exciting opportunity, but more importantly, like, you have a range of them. They're so different, like, and people are going to be different and suitable for different things because of it.
I think that's absolutely so you see it a lot in America. I think there are so many different culturally different businesses within it. I think probably even more so than here. So my surprise with it was the American market and how fragmented it was, and how people would do literally anything in the majority of US based businesses. So they're recruiters without a niche or a specialism. And obviously the UK market, I think for a number of years, has been going very heavily specialism and niche orientated. So when you're out there and people are doing something, it's almost like they're doing a different job. Yeah. So when you bring people into it from a US business, culturally it's a big change for them. It's almost doing a different job for them when they're doing that. So and you guys said that you did a great job for us earlier this year with James, who came over to us. And I think that bit there of understanding a business and putting the right person into that for the right reasons is exactly what you're talking about in terms of knowing a business and understanding a business and putting the people who are right for that company into it, which is a big part of the job, right?
Yeah,
it is.
Sure.
It brings me to whenever you started with it, when you were with NES, and you're under a mandate to find Americans, and really, the lads just wanted people like them.
Yeah, that was a challenge. I think definitely it was a new internal recruitment function. They had decided to invest in that, and they did it with all sincerity. They had all the right intentions of they wanted to build a local sort of workforce. But again, coming back to this cultural setup of how their business ran, you know, they were 360. Everyone owns their own desk. They own their clients. They own their candidates. They run the whole machine. And traditionally for Americans, that's not the way they operated. I mean, there are some 360 shops, but a lot of it's 180. I'm a recruiter, I don't do any sales. I'm a sales guy, I would have no interest in recruitment, and it's just very different. So I think that reality was challenging to how do you get people who are used to that setup that is, for right or wrong, very different, and how do you try and bring them in, integrate it, and make that happen? And that was a big struggle, and definitely struggled against it.
In fact, remains a struggle now, doesn't it?
Yeah, we have more joy, if anything, I think, going down the routes of either grads, you know, that you could really just train in the way that you wanted to, or taking off more often than not, actually trying to take sort of salespeople, not in recruitment, and then kind of bringing them in and teaching them recruitment, because we just found it to try and reverse some of that cultural aspect was really difficult. And, you know, also it wasn't always right for the person, because whilst they're like, I want to give 360 a go, it's a hard, like doing a 360 desk is tough, you know, and it's not for everyone. And I think it was always having that in mind as well, like, okay, we might be able to get a bum on a seat or whatever, but is it the right bum on the right seat, and is it right for us, and is it right for them? And that was always a really challenge. That 360 180 is a tough thing for the Americas anyway, I think, for UK businesses.
How did you find it, Karla, in New York?
We've been quite lucky in that we've found some British people who are already in New York. So I think when you're moving people over, you do run that risk that actually they've got to embed in the country, they want to go explore, whereas when you've got people who are local, actually they're there just to work and they're ready to go. So I think you have like some challenges the other way too.
Do your guys work in the US? Do they do 360 or 180?
I have people doing all sorts. So
really?
Some
So you've had to
180,
adjust.
some 360.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that depending on the market that works?
Depending on the person.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then what we need and how that fits with the team at the time.
Because that was interesting. I know Stuart Cherry brought that up in OJA when we did the video interview over there with him. that a lot of companies, and we're definitely getting that feedback, kind of go over with that, we're going to be 360 and that's what we're going to do and that's the way that we get it. And then they're there like 18 months and they quickly realise like, oh, this might not work. And at the same point, they're not abandoning it and going, we're going to do 180 and that's it. But people are now starting to have to be a little bit more inventive of, okay, we haven't had 180 before, but could that work? Like if we find the right people, could we have like 360 people? Could we have a bit of a 180 split in a certain area? And I think it's, not being afraid to think outside of the box of how to adapt your business to be successful in the States. Like I think that's...
We're very much at the top of the market there in terms of employment and that. So what I've been told is the sales side of it isn't as important as it was from bringing on clients. So to have somebody who can run the whole process and do the sourcing side is really important. Are you guys finding that you're more job heavy or you're more candidate heavy?
We're quite job heavy, but we're scaling, so that sales element is still really important to us. But what I found the difference between the UK and the US is the expectation is a little higher. People don't maybe have great expectations always of recruiters in the UK, so if you don't deliver, you probably get a second chance. You don't get a second shot in the US. You have to deliver what you say you can first time round. I think that you might.
Yeah, it's a funny market, isn't it? Because it's you go over to America and you've got visions of America full stop, haven't you? About the superpower and all this sort of thing, and yet. A lot of it is far further back than you'd imagine it to be. And I'm talking about the airports, the infrastructure, the payments, and recruitment. I'm always, whenever I speak to people about it, I talk about how disruptable I think a US recruitment model is. And people are always thinking, oh, they must be really good at it. American salespeople, you've seen it in the movies, etc., etc. But actually, because I think of some of the way that they're set up, it's very beatable. And I personally think, right, sometimes you've got to stick to your guns about what you should do and what's worked for you. And I think the companies that have scaled the quickest in the States generally haven't changed their model to suit that thing. They've gone in there and they've stayed tight to what they want to do, and they've done recruitment basics really, really well. Yeah. And they've found good ways to train people to do what they want them to do. And I think sometimes you can go into a market and try and copycat it, and there's a reason why it's beatable in the marketplace at the moment anyway, from doing what you've done. So I think actually we've always wanted to have a Starbucks style cookie cutter way to expand the business into different geographies. And yes, you've got various little cultural differences that you've got to be aware of, but I think you've got to be true to who you are and trust your plan and deliver that plan well. And if you do it, it's there. Now, going back to that original question, is it a job heavy market? Is it a candidate heavy market? I think if you go in that standard sort of thing, that there's hundreds of companies, and you only have to walk around Manhattan, don't you? And you see how many businesses or buildings there are, and all of them are full of people, right? So there's always going to be jobs out there, but it's you still have to be good to get those people to start. You still have to be proactive to do it. It's not just going to come to you. It's not. I don't believe it is completely streets paved with gold. I think you've got to be good to be good. If you're good, you're great. If you're poor, you're still poor. Yeah.
When we look at the two big exits of UK companies, the Frank Group and Faden, they've really done what you just said. They stayed true to their model.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at it and they've done...
But they did go down the grad route as well. I think a lot of them went, okay, well, we want to stay true, but to try and take people from that recruitment background that's very different from ours. Yeah. Maybe for the right person, but instead, what we're going to do is just develop a really awesome training package, and we're going to bring people in where they're like a lower experience level, and we're just going to train them our way. And I think there's great success in that.
They're agnostic towards the location as well, so they'll have a centered location, and they'll be doing jobs all around the country. I think that's interesting that you don't really need to meet people they're saying you don't really need to meet people face to face to do deals. Yeah. But
they tend to move around a lot, don't they? So when you look at it, they will they'll go on the road trips, and they'll go to Boston from New York, and they'll go to Chicago from New York, and they'll take internal flights, which are peanuts effectively, and do that client meeting side of things, and then come back to it. Look, I go back to when I started in recruitment, 2000, it was actively encouraged not to go out and meet people. So yeah, it was like that. Why would you go out? It'd be wasting your time. You could be here, banging on the phone, and nostalgic days. But potentially it wasn't. The world's moved on a little bit, and I think probably back there, I do think recruitment's a couple of years behind where it is, and that gives you, if you can take contemporary tools and hit it hard, you can really run a long way in the market out there.
I think just to touch on Karla's point, interesting, you mentioned, in the UK, like the expectations of recruiters, and, you don't quite get it right the first time, they're probably going to give you another go, and in America not. I think that lends to, and I know Rob spoke about this, I think, when we were there, I think in America they have much higher expectations of recruiters because they do actually see it as a consultant position. They are hiring you, they are engaging with you for your advice, your recommendations, for you to actually go and find someone, and it's seen in a really positive light, and it really, in I suppose the light it should be seen, that you are an expert in your field and you are there to provide a consultancy service. So I think because of that, it does mean you don't get it right, and you're kind of not going to be given a shot or whatever, or they're certainly going to not be happy with it. But on the flip side, I think for doing business and sales, it's a lot of a warmer reception, because they are already looking at you like, oh great, you're a recruitment expert, and if I'm hiring, I'm going to listen to you because you're an expert in your field. Whereas I think in the UK they don't
it's my dream. I mean, this is my soapbox for ages about this. It is a profession. It is, you speak to any CEO of any business, I think, in the country, and if they're saying what their top priority is, it's got to be people, and if they're saying something else, they're lying, as far as I'm concerned. Yet you look at the professional services listings when you look at listed companies and the FTSE and such like, and recruitment's in there alongside lawyers and accountants and management consultants and such like, but it never gets any of the credibility. In the States, it gets that credibility. It's seen as a credible career. It's seen as someone there who is there to build teams, networks, businesses. And that's something I love about that country, and I love about the profession out there, and something which I'm really passionate about growing over here as well, making sure people really see themselves as professional when they're doing the job, and clients see you as professional when when they're having the service from you as well.
You've developed your model around that, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's so important. It's something I'm massively passionate about, because I do think it's a great industry, and I'm bored of it being bashed as much as it does, and I think sometimes we're the victims of that by having a sort of inferiority complex about what we do, which we shouldn't do.
Do you think, put this out to everybody, do you think there's anything else we can do to change that in terms of the way that we operate our businesses?
Toby's right, sometimes we perpetuate that ourselves. That's how we feel, our consultants feel, that's how they approach our clients. I know you probably don't want to use a recruiter. Well, why would you go in like that? Yeah, we do perpetuate that.
I think that's even reflected, moving on sort of a little bit, but into regards to fees, I think that's reflected in the fees that you can get in the States versus the fees in the UK. I mean, here we're kind of like, Joe Blogs down the road, give you 15%, well, I'll do it for 12.5, and you shouldn't undercut your fee, because at the end of the day, if you believe in the service that you're providing and it's valid service, you should be going in at 20%, 25% if you believe genuinely it's value add to that business. And I think, again, you look at the fees in the States, they're charging 20, 25, 30, 35%. The fees are just enormous, but people are true to that because they know it's a worthwhile and valuable fee for their time, for their expertise that they're providing.
And it gives you the opportunity to be introduced through your clients. We're really seeing that because they value who we are, what we do. They're introducing us to other companies. So we work a lot with consulting firms. They're introducing us to the end client. Like that's the recruitment dream, right? And we've made a lot of money out of that this year. It's because they value what we do.
But you look at that in professional services over here. That's how you don't have sales teams in solicitors. You don't have sales teams in management consultancies. You don't have sales teams in accountants. By and large, and that's because the service does the job for them, and that's utopia, isn't it? When you do a really good job and word spreads and people come to you, and I think there's been a bit of a sea change in that. I think 2008 onwards has sort of improved the industry, cleansed the industry a little bit, and I think you've had to be better, which I love. But I just think people can do a better job of really sort of taking some pride in what they're doing and delivering a better service. And I talk about faster, better, stronger as the future of recruitment. Faster technology, rather than technology doing the job itself, but allowing you to find things, stronger relationships and better recruiters. And if you put those things together, I think that will be the future of UK recruitment, and I certainly think that spreads across to America as well.
The media piece interests me a lot. Describe what your day is today.
So it's been a pretty brandy day today on all of that. So we were doing some video, some shoot in the office this morning. We've come over here and doing the podcast today, going back to the office to do another video thing later on this afternoon, and then doing another testimonial on video today. So it's it's growing all the time, isn't it? And you've got to be careful with it. Look, I've fallen into. I love it. I love what we've done with video. I love what we do with events and media and magazines and all this sort of stuff. But you've got to be disciplined around it. And today's a sort of hyper case of it. It's not like that all the time. But I think it's so important just to add value to our industry. I think it's important to add value to our customers, and we do a lot to help showcase what they're about and what they're talking about and their brands. And if we can help our customers grow their networks by introducing them to other people, to grow their networks by bringing them to events and putting other people, good people together, and then to help grow their brands by putting them out there on video and talking to them about their stories, it's valuable content, right? It's valuable content to help people be better. And if we can sit there and say, our strapline is your success, our business. So if we're helping people to be more successful by doing all of this sort of stuff and adding value to them, I think that adds to the credibility of who we are as a business, and people want to be sticky with you as a business.
How do you make sure that your consultant's personal brand is aligned with your business brand in the day of, here I'm here, there's a selfie of me, here's a video of me, here's...
So look, I'm not going to sit there and tell them what their personal brand should be, because that defies the logic of a personal brand. So it's but I think it's giving people the opportunity to be themselves. So that we hire people based off a pretty clear criteria that I know you know about: person, professional and recruiter, and it starts with getting the right person on board first. So we trust people then to go out there and be themselves, because people will be buying them. You buy the professional you're working with, not necessarily the business sometimes. I think the minute you start becoming too communist about how they want to be, you might be in a slightly different, difficult situation. So just be, I trust people to be themselves, and they know what the brand's about. They know what our ethos and our values are, and generally they're pretty good.
Give them
alongside it. Yeah, exactly.
I'm quite interested to hear, because, Jeremy, you mentioned before around sort of, you're obviously in the contractor space. Traditionally, to date, the majority of clients that we've kind of worked with stateside have been more perm heavy versus contract heavy, which again for the UK, it's not that it's necessarily different, but in the UK it is around like, let's push the temp book, let's push the contractor book. Certainly if you're a business that wants to scale or grow, it's always about the temp side. So again, Karla, Toby, it'd be interesting to hear sort of perm versus temp in the US.
You need a minimum of 30% and ideally 50% if you want to scale,
traditionally,
sell your business, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So you're obviously seeing huge growth on the contractor side in the US.
True, but it takes time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know your contract books or perm, perm versus contract split.
American book is 0 at the moment.
Yeah, exactly right. So there's perm business, which I think is the easier thing to go after straight away.
Yeah.
It's not as your US business is new. You don't have as much cash in it. It's difficult to run contractors. Payment terms are usually longer in the US, and they're standard like 30 to 45. So it's easy to get some kind of cash in the bank doing perm. The other thing that I was saying to you earlier is that in the US, by default, everyone is employment at will, which basically means there's no notice period. So there's no requirement to give anyone notice, which means if you take on a perm person with no notice, they're basically a contractor, because you can terminate them at any point. So it's very easy to do perm business. And I don't know exactly the notice periods that are being offered to the perm placements that you guys are doing. I'd be interested to know. But that is, especially in places like California, people are put on at will. So then they could be a perm person for 6 months and then be terminated.
Wow.
And so they're essentially a 6-month contractor.
Yeah. It's getting slightly trickier out there, I think, and I know over in California it's incredible, isn't it? No non-compete rules and all this sort of stuff. It's extraordinary. Compared to what we're used to. You're talking a couple of weeks in America, and it does move everything a lot quicker, which is why it's a good permanent market, right? You've got higher fees, higher salaries, bigger quantities of jobs, and shorter notice periods. It's fantastic. but I want to scale. I want to scale our contract book out there. I've seen companies do some amazing things with their contractor books out there. So it's without question the market. We wanted to get a strong perm basis as we did when we first started up over here, and then really concentrate on building out the contract book. But it's interesting when you talk there about multipliers and the ideal 50-50 or 60-40 contract to perm split. The companies you've mentioned there with the biggest sales recently or events recently, Faden and Frank Group, both of them have been very predominantly perm businesses, right? And I think that's been a bit of a sea change based off not just now contractor book being the thing that drives the multiplier, but scalability, growth, profitability, geography and niche. And if you've got the right niche and if you've got the right sort of scalability and an international footprint, you don't have to be a pure contract business at the moment to get the same sort of multipliers that some people are looking for.
Kind of are telling you that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I sold my business with next to no contract book.
Yeah.
And Karla, do you think for you guys, sort of looking longer term, is it sort of again going down a similar route, establishing that good sort of perm base foundation, and then do you think you'd look at contract or mainly staying in that perm space?
I think we'll dominate in perm rather than contract, but we have a couple of contracts already. We have some clients that will only work with us on the contract side, and we've got a really punchy 50 million in 5 years target. I don't think we can do that without contract, so we're going to have to do it. And that's where your company is really helpful because it does outsource that risk for us.
For you to kind of take on the knowledge and expertise that we've gained over 19 years, it would be very difficult because you'd basically be taking your focus away from perm. Whereas people, someone starting out can do a couple of contractors here and there with us. They don't have to kind of refocus everything and invest into building out the infrastructure for contractors. And then we can just do that basically, and you're tapping into our expertise.
Yeah, it's where
50
the law is
million.
different in so many states as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like California is notoriously difficult. All the complexities in employment law are in California.
Yeah.
Of course.
Is that 50 million going to be multiple offices in the US? Is it going to be just in cyber? What's the kind of road plan on that?
Yeah, 50 million just in cyber, 3 offices, New York, DC, and then West Coast. When I finally decide I need a tan.
I think that's also the Californian dream, isn't it? It's funny when we speak to candidates, I think especially now having been in New York as well, like I loved New York when we went, but it is full on.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like it's so busy and you've got to have that energy and you've got to be looking for that as well.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really good takeaway from our trip. Was I think before I was kind of like, why wouldn't someone want to move to New York? Of course they'd want to move to New York.
Yeah.
But now having seen it and felt that energy and that buzz, it's now made me really sort of, I suppose, reevaluate, like whenever we talk to people or we're looking at candidates, like, is that actually what they want though? Yes, they want to go to America. Yes, they want to go to a cool city. But would LA be better? Like, would a cool city where it's a little bit more relaxed be suitable? Because I think if you're going to New York, you're going and you're giving it all. And for some people that work great and for others that won't. But I think even having that consideration of the different cities and Austin,
Totally.
Texas is hiring loads more. That's a whole other little cultural scene that'll be suitable for other people, So I think sort
some
of
great benefits down
outside
there
of
as
the
well, right?
companies, it's looking at, what's going to be a better location for them personally and those sorts of things.
If you have kids, I think you're looking at a regional city that you can live outside.
Well, San Diego, I mean, we've placed a lot of people in San
that'd be
Diego,
brilliant.
California, which is, perfect for families and things like that. So it's taking in all those other factors.
Jeremy, what's the growth of Texas like at the moment? Are more and more people focusing on
Yeah,
it?
more and more people. I mean, more and more people loads of people are there already. More and more people are talking about it. We haven't seen lots of people actually go and set up, but it's definitely on the cards for a lot of people. And it's mainly Austin, Texas.
When we speak to the ideal candidate that everybody wants, the 3 to 4 years degree, single, under 30. Carefree, add a bike for her if you're listening. The finance ones want to go to New York. The tech ones want to go to LA, or usually when they get a choice. And then I'm hoping that the slightly older ones, our age, they then choose to go to the Austins whenever that gets up and going, because it's more affordable for families?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been there 3 times over the past like 2 years, and I personally love it. I think it's so nice, very livable. It is, I guess, more family oriented, but a lot of young people are there and they love it. It's really, really cool. It's very different to the rest of Texas. Yeah. There's little like electric scooters everywhere. It's a wicked city.
You recruited in Houston for a little bit.
Yeah, so I did Houston mainly, and they had New Orleans at the time as well, small office in New Orleans, and then they had Orlando, and that was, Orlando was obviously a nice sell for people as well that were maybe a little bit more sort of looking for a family sort of orientated place. But it's interesting because when we talk about Texas, I know when I went to visit Houston, and everyone's different, it just wasn't for me. I kind of found it a bit soulless.
Yeah.
But when we were speaking to Lewis Lyons at Opus, he did Austin for 3 years, and he was like, wow, it was so cool. Yeah. He did reflect back though and said that as he was leaving Houston, they went through a big Super Bowl, and he was just like, and it actually got a really cool location kind of as he was going. But he had wonderful things to say about Austin, thought it was a really, really good location.
It's really cool.
He actually was like, he said they were a bit torn when they made the decision to move to New York because they loved it so much. So.
There's so many good places. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I was with the CEO of a major, listed recruitment business recently, and he was talking about how you would, to look at secondary locations, and there's obviously the big hubs, and we're very much in those, but there's so many different states that you just don't think about, and again, just the scalability of those. So I'm so excited about how much scale there is to it, and the ability to have a multi-state business out there. Is just
you've gone for the 2 most expensive.
Yeah. Cool, huh?
Yeah. Well, I suppose you can only work backwards in the finances.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everything's cheaper now.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay the most taxes. I'm going to pay the most of my money. But that's where the biggest fees are.
That's where the clients are. You move to the clients at that sort of stage, and more importantly, actually, I think that's where the people are that we wanted to. So I've always said this is a people-led business, and we are entrepreneurial, based around people who we find and where people want to go with that. As long as it's not sort of Dawlish in Devon or someone like that, it makes the you make decisions based off your people. And if we're going to see someone who is passionate about Colorado, then I think you look at Colorado as a state. Yeah. Chicago, Boston. I was talking to someone the other day about it, and they're quite keen to be in Chicago at some stage. It's a great market. There's a lot of scale in it all.
I think you made quite an interesting point though, Toby, earlier. I know when we were discussing as well, and I know today we're kind of talking about America and all of that, but I think with this kind of drive to go to America as well, I think some people are kind of also missing the fact that then there is great opportunities equally at home, like certainly here in London and stuff. Yeah. So, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I've thought about this a lot because, I was with S3 for the first 8.5 years of my career, and when it came to the next sort of phase for it, the opportunities were abroad. The real exciting things for me to do would have been to go abroad. Now, as I think I said before, I've lived in the same village in Surrey my entire life, and will be wheeled out of there ultimately for somewhere down the line. But the thing for me is I missed an opportunity to grow in that business because it stopped creating multiple businesses. And I think you've got to be careful not to lose all your best talent internationally, because you can damage your domestic business. You can lose good talent from that domestic business. And yes, it's a great and massively attractive thing to be talking about and a cool thing for people to be going. But I think you've also got to recognise that this is a wonderful market, the UK. It is the home of recruitment, as far as I'm concerned, the centre of the recruitment world. It's where the best recruitment in history has been done. And I think it's, whilst it's busy, as we talked about with some of the recruitment companies in here, to be the best in it, you can be the best in it if you work really hard at doing that. And there is so much scale and so many different markets and so much things you can do here as well. I want to make sure we're always looking at opportunities to invest in people domestically, as well as give them great opportunities to say, right, I want to see the States or Europe or Asia and beyond. I think it's an important thing for us to do, and it's certainly something that's going to be in my head as we continue to grow, is where are my opportunities for people domestically, and how do I invest in them rather than just say, right, okay, this is all about diverting our attention elsewhere.
There's some upside to being in a more established market too, right? Yeah. We sometimes have to introduce what recruitment is to businesses in the US. You don't have to do that here, and when you sign them up, they know what they're signing up for.
And are you just going to be focused on the US, or are you going to grow in other markets as well, like the domestic market?
We're still growing the team here in the UK too. So like you, I think there's still a lot of potential in the UK, and we certainly haven't hit ours, so we're still growing here.
Interesting point. You said that you left S3 whenever they stopped scaling offices. It's really important to catch a company on that upward curve, isn't it?
Yeah. So look, I joined it 450 odd people in the 12th company in the group, and I often you think back and said, what if I didn't do the 2 years in events? What if I didn't do the 3 years at university and I got in 5 years earlier? And you could have been in a great situation, and I loved it. I had the time of my life there. It was an amazing 8.5 years. I learned so much from some amazing people. But that sort of stage, and I never thought I'd actually leave there, but it just got to a stage where it was a different opportunity than the opportunity when I first joined. And I love that idea of, I think it's absolutely the right model. Give people the opportunity to entrepreneurially grow and invest in new businesses and startups within a group of companies. There's nothing wrong with that model. That is a genius model, and it only doesn't happen when people don't want to give anything away or get too protective or don't want to invest in other people around it. So I want to live that model, and I want to keep on making sure that we're giving people the opportunity domestically and meritocratically to come through and doing that. So people joining our business, joining it at a really interesting time rather than 2,500-3,000 people down the line, to be involved in that and see it come way through. And look, ultimately one day would I love to float like that business did. That would be a dream, That would be that's the ultimate sort of thing. So right, we are the best in the world at what we're doing. We floated. We're a FTSE 200 company. The pride you felt at that sort of stage by being involved and being a part of that was awesome. And to recreate that would be even more awesome.
Yeah.
I remember being at a large recruitment firm and seeing like the management team had been there already for 5 years and thinking, you're going to be here another 10 years.
Yeah.
They're not opening offices anywhere. And I didn't have the knowledge I do now because of what we do. But if I was at that stage and I was 2 years in, I'd be looking at who's opening offices, where.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, he left. He was on a management track, then he left to join a startup, and now he's just done an MBO in half the company.
Yeah.
I remember having that conversation as well when he was considering the offer, and I mean there was marginally more money on the base or whatever, and I remember him saying to me, oh but Charlotte, at this company where I am now and I'm on this management track and they tell me I'll be a manager in 18 months or whatever, and I was like, but if you don't, like the other one, you could go and you could do it and it could all go horribly wrong, and you know what, I'm sure you could come back here and they probably go, you know what, you've gained more experience, jump back on and we'll see how you go, and you'll be on that same management track in 18 months. Or you could put all your heart and soul into this growing business because you have the energy and the drive and the motivation to do it, and it could take you, who knows where, and before you know it was like he was director of that region, and then as you say now he's already like a half shareholder in this new company with the guy, and so I think sometimes if you've got that drive, you've got that motivation, that entrepreneurial spirit, and you want to sort of look to invest in a company that's going to invest in you. I'm always a big believer, and again with people moving abroad I use a similar analogy. If you give it a go and it all goes wrong, just go back to what you know, but at least you tried and you've experienced it, and the worst case scenario you go, hey, that wasn't for me, but if you never did, you'll always question it.
It is that sort of thing to really give it a go, isn't it? I mean, those are the things. People shouldn't do it, I don't think, as a sort of gap year, which you see people taking these opportunities out sometimes in those businesses. To go it, you go full into it, and you maximise the opportunity. So you're talking about fading earlier on, right? And don't know if you met Harry U-turn from, but
no.
But I've heard, I haven't either, but I've heard great stories about him being someone who went there very early on, built that business up, scaled with it, and then moved into the CEO of the business after the second event, right, or the first event, I think it was. Yeah. And so everyone's got that opportunity. When they're going over and they're taking that thing, they're not just going in there to do a job. And I hate the idea of people just going in to do a job and just to do stuff and go through there. If you're going in for something, you should go into it with all your heart, smash it up, and if you're there and you're landing in a business that's 10 people, 20 people strong or whatever, then make the most of that opportunity, climb the ladder, be meritocratic, and then drive something in a big way. And I think sometimes people just go through the motions, which is a massive waste for when you're doing that. When you're taking that sort of a move, go for it with. My advice is definitely just go with it with everything you got and outwork the competition. And if you do that, you're in a great spot because it can move so fast. It really can.
I think what's been quite interesting as well is coming back to sort of that London market is we've actually had a number of candidates that we've placed recently in London that were local in the market but have also kind of come back, and we've had colleagues we worked in Australia that have come back to London, and kind of the feedback that we're getting is like, oh, the London market's like really good at the moment, it's really hot and this and that. And I think people kind of forgot a little bit about it, you know, so I think, again, as you say, it's all this shiny thing of, oh, great opportunities abroad, let's move here, and this and this and that. And then I think people kind of forgot that it is an established market here, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad market, or, you know, there's loads of potential and loads of opportunity. And
it's hard for people who are new to the industry to pick a winner of a business because there's so many, and a lot of the same messages are coming. So who do you trust? How do you figure out who's reputable, who's got a plan? And young people don't go on to Company House and look at profits and go on, like some of them go on to Glassdoor, but it's very hard for them. So I think it's tough picking a winner. When you look at the recruiters that excite you whenever you interview them, is there anything that you look for?
Their values, like I agree with you, it's all about the people. So like my biggest thing is honesty. You can make mistakes, but if you lie to me, just don't show up the next day. You're
dead to me.
You're dead to me, yeah. So it's really about their values, and then it's that not gut feel in an interview, but can I work with you? Do I want to invest in you? And I hope that they're choosing me because they believe I'm going to do that for them.
What do you reckon?
I mean, so, like, as an internal recruiter, which is more my background, I've interviewed hundreds, thousands of people, and I always find at the end of an interview, one of kind of my biggest bugbears is, you know, often you ask people, like, what's your motivations for applying for the role or this sort of thing? And they always sort of say, oh, well, I'm looking for this, or I'm looking for that, or I'm looking for this. And they never at any stage kind of say what they're offering. And I think that always, for me, like, kind of lets a candidate down. So when I look at a candidate, I look for values and all those other things as well. I'm looking for someone that, as we kind of referenced a little bit before there, is making that commitment to come. So it's like, yes, I'm looking for this, but because I'm going to bring this, and this is where I'm going to take it, and these are all of the things that I think I could offer you, and they're already looking at it as a partnership, not just as in, I want someone to do this for me, I'm going to do this to get that, you know. So I think plays in a little bit to the values as well, but I think it's, looking at that's one thing that's...
And it's the stuff beyond the obvious things, isn't it? Because I don't think I've ever interviewed anyone who hasn't said they're not money motivated. I mean, that's the most common tick in a box, isn't it? So money motivated, I'm a really hard worker. And the actual combination of those two is so rare. It's like the hidden gems. So people who say that, you know, they're hard working, which you've got to be. Like when you first get, we're talking entry level here. You know, when you get into recruitment, there's no way of doing it well other than really
high activity,
just smashing it out there. Yeah, high activity, putting the hours in, doing that sort of thing. You hear people are saying, I remember years ago there was a girl who came to us and she said she was talking about this mood board she had in her house, and on the mood board she had the car she wanted, she had the house she wanted, she'd written a cheque to herself for $1 million with a date that she wanted to cash that on. And honestly, I've never seen anyone from interview to action be two more different people. And of course, there's loads of people who say they want to have this, that, and the other. But the amount of people who are ready to really sacrifice, which is an important word, it's like a dirty word, but I think it's one of the most important parts of recruitment and business, full stop, is to actually sacrifice and put yourself in there to be good at something, to make enough mistakes. People play it so straight that they don't give themselves the opportunity to be bad, to be good. At some stages, and sometimes that's the company. They won't let people make mistakes, and they put fear into that. And but more often than not, it's people they're just trying to be, score the perfect goal, as I always, and put the analogy into action on it. So I want people in there who are going to give me a little bit more than that, to tell me that what they're actually doing it for is something a little bit more than I just want to make loads of money, which is great. But really, do you? And I'm hard working. Really, what have you done, and what have you done to prove that sort of stuff? And I think it's a really rare commodity about how many people are really ready to put in what they want to do in it.
And as your life evolves, your circumstances change, and you're both mums. And you talk about sacrifice to run a business. You're both business owners. How do you, I don't know how you do it, but how do you find that? I'll put it to both of you, but how do you find doing that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it is the juggle. I think it's a, common problem for, female sort of, whether they're business owners or workers or whatever, that are mums as well. It is kind of juggling that time, and I think sacrifice is a big word. But I think sacrifice in all aspects, you have to be willing to give a little bit in some places, give a little bit in other places. And also, I think, myself and Karla spoke about this before, also appreciate and accept sort of flexibility. I think nowadays in recruitment, before it was very much we're 8 till 6 and it's Monday to Friday and it's this and this. And I think not just in recruitment, but generally in working practices, we're moving a little bit more into that sort of work-life integration, which can have its positives and negatives, for whatever
Especially if you're
reasons.
married to somebody who's like me.
Yes, full on all the time. But at the same point, it, as a mum, for me, that kind of works a little bit better, because I can get up in the morning, I can have a quick check of the emails, and then I can do the kids stuff, then I can get them to nursery, I can work in that time, then I can take a couple of hours off, spend time with them, and then I do, an hour or two in the evening. So I can flex it to make it work, and I think that's becoming more and more acceptable in the industry as well, that it doesn't have to be I'm at my desk at 8, I leave at 6, and if you're gone at 10 to 6, everyone's kind of watching and going, what's happening? Because long gone are the days of if you're not at your desk, you're not working. I mean, Karla, I don't know your thoughts, but
Yeah, exactly the same. I have to leave the office normally about 4:30, and then I'm not stopping, I'm doing the school run and all of that, but then that works for me. I can then work in the evening, and I'll work 8 till 12, 8 till 10, whatever it is that day. And my motivation has never been higher since having the kids. You don't necessarily know how that's going to affect you, and I love hiring mums, because you are not there to mess around. The time you're at your desk, you are working full on. That is it. So I think it's a real benefit.
I think it's increased my productivity for sure. I mean, I like to think I'm a pretty sort of productive person, but I completely agree with that. It makes you value the time that you do have, and you don't just kind of swan around and have a chat and a coffee, or if you do, it's for a reason. You're very much in that time, like, right, let's get on and get things done,
Charlotte's obviously very capable, but I had to really try and persuade her to come back into the business. Like, it's going to be different this time. We've got 2 administrators. Like, you're not going to have to do all that, but I do need you to do all of this. and you, because it's different now, because we're doing more media and we're doing a bit more face-to-face interaction, you decided you made a call to come back in. Thank God. Did you go straight back in after kids, or do you have a wee gap, or like, was your head in it the whole time? I'm
laughing because I was sending emails while I was in labour. I was reading client terms the day after.
Here. You were sending emails.
Maybe I don't regret it. Maybe I should, but no, I didn't really take any time out at all.
That's awesome.
I don't know if it is. I'm not sure that is something to be proud of, really. It's a time in your life maybe you should take a small step back.
And has the world of recruitment changed for hiring women and women staying in agency recruitment? Is there, like, it's an interesting topic, and I'm not really qualified to speak about it.
I'm still struggling, to be honest. Like, we've gone through periods where we've had more women than men. At the moment, we have fewer women than men. So I don't really know if it's changed. But what I think is that the females I have do better. I think the way you sell in recruitment now, for me, has changed. It's about building trust. And I don't know if it's a gender thing, but the women that I have seem to build that trust a little better. It's a softer sell, and that seems to be working for us.
Excellent. How do you find it, Toby?
Yeah, I think it's about. I'd love to have more women in the office. We're probably about 30-70. And I looked at the data behind our recruits, the candidates who are coming into us, and it's 30-70. So it's almost exactly the same across it, and we just don't see the volume of female candidates coming into the business. And I want to make sure I'm bringing the best person in rather than a male or a female. That's really important to me. But it's just access, isn't it? It's I don't know if it's you guys will probably know it better than me, but technology, which is where we're in, hasn't traditionally, all the way through my career, has probably had a similar sort of thing. I've been in big companies, I've been in smaller companies, and I think it's probably been the same all the way through. But then I remember remember when I got my hair cut years ago, and I said the hairdresser said, was I on recruitment, and her her thought immediately was saying, are you the only guy in it? And I thought that was an interesting take on that. And I don't know where it came from, but it's always sort of been in my head as to why we haven't been getting that same sort of volume of people and applicants, and from rec to rec or whatever it might be. We just haven't had that volume through from it. So I think there's work we can do. We've got some ideas actually to sort of really push the story out. And I agree with you that you can have some great female recruiters, and I'd love to open the doors up to it more.
Yeah, I definitely think I'd be interested to know the figures for America as to men and women in recruitment in America, because again, for me, and this is just my own personal view, but I think we go back to sort of maybe how recruitment is perceived and things like that, and it being a career and a profession. I think in America, because it is perceived more as you are that consultant, and I don't want to say it's less sort of cutthroat or anything, because I think in all sales environments there is an element of that, but I think maybe it's not that sort of traditional let's pit each other against each other, and some women really like that. That's absolutely fine, but I think in America, because it is seen as a solid profession, it kind of has, I suppose, that view of it. I'd be interested to know the figures as to whether or not that impacts anything, or...
It's exactly the same ratio in our US office as in the UK office so far, and again, the same issue. I remember when it was just Sarah, and it was becoming very, very much... We were very, very conscious of it being Sarah and a bunch of guys. And... I think that probably drove us to say, look, we really need to find some company for her at that sort of stage, and it's it's starting to move a little bit on there. But I don't know for the rest of the marketplace, but so far it's been a very similar sort of story of applications and such. Like it's been again quite male driven.
Well, I think, to be honest, that's probably going to wrap us up there for today. So thanks so much, everyone. Thank you very much to PGC, obviously, for the sponsorship of the episode. And really excited to catch up with everyone afterwards and to get the content out.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.